three of us have had this fascination with leadership, and though we come from very different backgrounds, it's the thing that we all share in common is this passion for what it means to be a leader and to become a leader. And of course, in today's world, it's a little more complicated than maybe it was a few generations ago. So Lisa, tell us a little bit about your journey and what role thinking about and developing leaders plays in your business.
Okay. I started off in the banking industry, as you know, and I was inspired about leadership because I had such bad leadership when I was in banking. And this was for real. There was management, and it was basically command and control style, and it wasn't anything that made employees feel really good or motivating for people to feel like they were developing. And so it became very much of a hobby, actually, of what does it take to be a good leader.
And for you, it started by understanding what was a bad leader.
Exactly.
So they were great teachers.
Exactly. They were great teachers. They were great teachers.
Yeah, and how about you, Reggie? You were born in India, you grew up in Hong Kong, and you came to the U.S. to go to college.
That's right.
So at what point did you start thinking about leadership?
Actually, when I was first put into that leadership role, without any background, any training, I was just thrust into this new role, and all of a sudden I had a team reporting to me, and they were looking at me for something, and over time I realized that that something was leadership.
And do you think that that was a unique experience for you, or with the businesses you work with and the leaders you work with, is that the way a lot of them start, where all of a sudden they've got a job and now they have to figure out how to do it?
I think so. I think organizations typically don't think about this as part of their strategy. They think that leaders are born, or when you put them into that role, they all of a sudden somehow magically get the skills to become a leader. But many a time, as Lisa said, it's about baptism by fire. And if we had a program, a tool, or some kind of a process for us to learn to become leaders, I think it would change the world.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that in my era, growing up in banking, you would promote the best banker into a managerial position. Had nothing to do with whether the person had any managerial or leadership skills, but that was why there was so much bad management and bad leadership that took place. And so learning more about leadership, as you're saying, Ranji, to have a program that really covers all of these things is essential in order to really round out those experiences. And that's why I think, Ron, the Complete Leader is so exciting, because it is holistic, and the program itself happens over a long period of time so people can practice and absorb. It's very exciting.
Yeah, so we'll get back to that in a moment. You've got me thinking about my own experience. And I think in my early days, I think leadership was just assumed. And any kind of leadership development I was looking for was more desperational. It's like, I'm a terrible time manager. I got to go figure out how to manage myself. Or I've got conflict with these people. I got to figure out how to get rid of this conflict so that we can be productive. And it seems that early on it was really driven by my frustrations over, I can see now they were my leadership gaps. But at some point I began to recognize, wow, this is a noble thing. This is an aspirational opportunity, that leadership is an opportunity to make a contribution in the world around us that has almost a ripple effect that you can't stop. And so I'm wondering if you had those kinds of experiences as well. Did you told me that you told us that you started with, all of a sudden I'm a leader and people are expecting things, I got to figure it out. Did you go through that transition where all of a sudden it had a certain nobility to it, or are you?
No, absolutely. It is about nobility, but it's also about learning a skill. Learning about leadership is a skill. It's actually multiple skills.
Yeah.
But having someone who's already a good leader teaching you and showing you the ropes, it would be the best way to start. I don't think anyone should be left on their own to figure things out, make a lot of mistakes, and while doing that, hurt people, and people are leaving organizations because of their poor manager or poor leader. I think if it was more purposeful, more intentional, I think the world would be a little bit different, and companies could do a lot better for their people.
Yeah, so it's not so much trial and error, but there's an intentional pathway to success. Lisa, early on, you said that one of the things that got you thinking a lot about leadership was watching people who weren't leading that effectively. What role has reading played in developing your ideas about leadership?
It has played a big role, and the other thing that has played a big role is modeling leaders who are successful. So, but reading, unfortunately, I did not have good leaders as role models, and therefore reading made a big difference to me in terms of being able to go up the leadership curve and be more effective. It was, frankly, I was self-taught in a lot of respects.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to get to the complete leader in a moment, but you're a woman. And in this society, although we have a lot more women in significant leadership positions than we ever have before, it's been an uphill climb. So how has that affected you in the way that you've perceived that other people receive your leadership, respond to your leadership, create opportunities for you for leadership? What's that experience been like?
Well, the experience has been varied over the years. When I was in banking, it was very challenging. Every time I moved into a new job, I was the first woman reporting to the person I reported to. And as of the last position I had, I thought, this is really getting old. So there was still a very strong feeling that women were different and that they needed different things. But of course, nobody really stopped to think about what that might be. And my opinion is that leadership is not a gender-based endeavor. However, women leaders have been so ignored in so many respects that there are some special issues that come up. And I'm amazed over and over again when I'm working with women executives how many of the issues they deal with are the same issues I was dealing with many, many years ago. And it's challenging.
Yeah, I think one of the most important insights for me as a leader has been recognizing that different people have different journeys. And for instance, you describing what it was like to be a woman growing in leadership and oftentimes being passed over. You knew you were more worthy, but because of a stereotype or a prejudice, you weren't moved into that position. That's something that I just wasn't even aware of. I've had to open myself up and listen and empathize with other people's experiences to recognize that they experience the world in a very different way. I'm wondering, for you through that journey, because you have achieved a high degree of notoriety and expertise and respect and even celebrity at this point, was it more aspirational for you to go through those knockdowns or to be passed over, or was it more frustrating?
I would say overall it was more aspirational. Interestingly, in my early days in banking, my role model was an African American man who had been in a room with me where I had experienced some very degrading interactions. And he showed up at my desk and said, "Do you want to talk?" I said, "About what?" And he said, "About what happened today." And I thought, gee, somebody noticed. But I always believed that I could do more. And when I was being knocked down in my latter days of banking, I used that as the opportunity to feel, okay, it's time for something different. And that was what caused me to go off on my own. I left cold. I had nothing. And I built what I have now from scratch.
The best way for you to achieve your highest potential and for the boss to recognize you was for you to be the boss.
For me to be the boss. However, my clients are still both men and women.
Yeah.
So the gender thing still is an issue, but I approach it differently because of the fact that it's my business.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that for you it's aspirational. So you say, yeah, I could get all down in the dumps about the fact that it's really not fair, but I'm going to figure out how to win in an unfair game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that reminds me of a book you've got coming up here soon. I think it's something like Fearless Leaders.
Oh, yes, truly fearless leaders.
Yeah,
Yes.
great.
So,
That's terrific. Renji, how about for you? Because I imagine, you grew up in Hong Kong, and you don't look like most of the people in Hong Kong. And then you came to the States. Pardon?
I do speak Chinese.
Yeah.
both Mandarin and Cantonese.
Yeah, I understand that, and I'm very impressed because I've had a hard time learning either one. And you came to the States, and you started a career here. Did you run into prejudice being a man of color?
Yeah, definitely. But as a minority, as a man of color, not only did I see it for myself, my own personal experiences, I witnessed it for other people, not just people of Indian ethnicity, even non-Indians, even Hispanics and Asians, all of us experience that. I mean, we share similar
Absolutely.
issues and challenges that women have felt and still are feeling. But I'd like to think that things are changing, a little too slow in my mind, but we're moving in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that's an important part of understanding leadership in the 21st century because it's going to take on a lot of different sizes, shapes, colors in order for us to continue to thrive.
Not only that, Ron, it's just it's beyond the color. It's also about the experiences that
Yeah.
you have, the upbringing that you have. If you grew up in a family where your role model are people who are teaching you things that aren't the right things to do, it's about your political affiliations. It's about your religious beliefs. There's a lot of things that shape your mind. It is the ability of a good leader or to recognize that and to get the best, cut through that noise, if you will, and get the best out of that person to develop them as true leaders.
Yeah, and so we all work with businesses, which means that we want to help leaders get results. We want to help them have successful organizations, which always has a very strong financial component. So when you think about the kinds of leadership skill sets that somebody needs in order to be successful leading an organization, what are the different kinds of skill sets that strike you?
Oh, there are so many skill sets. I would say that one that's very important is goal orientation. A lot of people have ideas, but if they don't take the ideas and execute, that can be problematic. I think the ability to be persuasive, the ability to you have strong interpersonal skills, your communication style, self-awareness.
These are all things that are part of the toolkit of being a good leader. Yeah. Renji, how would you answer
I
that?
think for me, a good leader, as Lisa said earlier, are role models. So learning about themselves first and how they manifest themselves to others is really the starting point. You know, assessing yourself as a leader, making yourself better, understanding your own mistakes and how you improve. I think leadership starts with getting yourself right first.
Yeah, and so becoming a leader,
Right.
or becoming a complete leader. In my own experience, there was some point at which I shifted from wanting to become a complete leader. Of course, I don't think you ever finished that journey, but where I started to say, how can I help other people optimize their leadership potential? And of course, you both know Randy Lisk, who was an electrical engineer at IBM for over 20 years. And at some point decided that the people thing was where he wanted to invest himself, similar to what we have. And several years ago, Randy and I started to have this conversation about how could we capture a lot of the things that we do in our executive coaching work to create some kind of a curriculum or some type of a context or a model that could grow beyond our executive coaching practice. And as you know, after several years, that eventually became the book, The Complete Leader. And tongue-in-cheek, our subtitle is Everything You Need to Know to Become a High-Performing Leader. Of course, we don't really presume that we can teach everything you need to know, but we were saying that there are a lot of different dimensions, a lot of different aspects of becoming a complete leader, and we wanted to try to capture what we thought were some universal skills or principles that would work for everybody. And I know you've both used that book and the program that we've built around it in varying ways. So I'm curious about your own observations about the skills that are outlined in that book, which they fall into these four categories: leaders thinking clearly, and leaders getting things done, and leaders leading others, and then leaders being authentic and continuing to grow. So what has it meant for you? Start with you, Renshi.
Yeah, there's so many elements there to talk about. I think when you say you're a leader, that's the first step. You recognize yourself as a leader, but to your point, Ron, you still have to perform.
Yeah.
And performing is performing in the arena of a workplace where you have people with all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of experiences and age levels. So how do you get the best out of the other person or the other persons that you're interacting with? Leading others, evaluating others, coaching others, empathizing with others, identifying how the other person can fit in best, what jobs that they might fit in best, what their future looks like in terms of a career progression, coaching, and developing, to me, are the hallmarks of great leadership.
Yeah. How about for you, Lisa? You've had a chance to read the Complete Leader book and use some of the things in it. How would you describe it to somebody who is asking you about developing their leadership skills?
I would describe it starting with the 4 areas that you mentioned a minute ago, and about how you can take this in small bites. I like to think of the components of the complete leader as little snacks. So you don't have to memorize and master everything all at once, but you can take these little pieces that add together and help you on the path of becoming the complete leader. And where you start is where you need the most. And so your development is a function of where you are now and where you'd like to be, understanding that gap, having a good trusted advisor to work with you to get there.
Yeah, I do want to go public and say that we never would have finished that book if it wasn't for Randy. He just was a phenomenal partner to work with, and we learned so much by sharing our experiences with each other and letting the book actually be an expression of our relationship instead of just each doing our assignments and getting it done. And part of what I was reminded of in the process of creating the book is that in the 21st century, leadership is never solo. That's right. It's always about relationships, and in many ways, the relationship between people is more important than the individual leader, because that's
Ron,
where the real work
I would
gets
even
done.
go further, Ron, and say that it used to be that we were coached as leaders to work on our weaknesses. Things like, you need to improve this, therefore go take this course, or let me send you to this program. I think today it's more about working on our strengths. What are you good at? And enhance that, continuing to make that better, but recognizing your shortcomings and finding other means to minimize your weaknesses, but maximizing your strengths.
Yeah, and all 3 of us have used reports, talent profiling reports from TTI Success Insights, which has been around for over 30 years. And what role do those reports play in the work that you do with leaders, Lisa?
Those reports create an objective foundation because we are not taking these assessments, and the leaders we work with take the assessments. It's the output of their input, and so this is what you said, and here's where we are, and let's talk about those gaps. To your point about focusing on strengths, one fortunate thing that came out of my banking days is that my first leader did believe that, and he actually said, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about what you need to work on. I want to really build on what your strengths are.
Yeah.
Which was very progressive for that era.
Yeah. You've probably heard this as well, but oftentimes after people complete one of these leadership profiles, where, as you said, they take the picture, not us, they're taking the picture. One of their first comments is, when did you talk to my mother?
Right.
In reality, we say, well, you're the one who took the picture.
Right. And the other thing people sometimes say is, well, after you really go through all of this isn't really anything new. And I always say, and it shouldn't be, because this is you. And if you know who you are, this is...
But it creates context
right.
and clarity
Absolutely.
and depth of understanding.
And there's something about it being on a piece of paper in black and white that they can refer to, and they can take notes on, and they can just process things a little differently.
Yeah.
Hey, when I first took the TTI Talent Profile Assessment, I was floored, because I said, how do they know? How do they know this is me? And I mean, I'd never gone through an assessment that took me through why I do something, how I do something, whether I can do something, and the level of skills and how good I am at those skills and what I can be in terms of leadership.
Yeah.
It was uncanny.
Yeah, I really can't imagine helping somebody on their journey to becoming a complete leader without having tools like this.
Right.
That help them develop deeper self-awareness and recognize the strengths, organize around those, but also recognize the shadows of those strengths. Right. And when Randy and I first finished the book, we thought, well, obviously this is not just a great tool for executive coaching, but it'd be a great leadership development journey or leadership development experience. And so we set it up originally like an EMBA. We found a lot of people around the world don't exactly want to use it that way. For instance, there's a group in Brazil, the second group of people in Brazil, that are getting together every Thursday for lunch and reading a chapter of the book and talking about it. And I'm really grateful. They've invited me now for the second time to be there for the last couple chapters of the book. And then one of our friends was telling us recently that there's a group of telecom leaders in Azerbaijan, of all places, that are using the book as their textbook for their ongoing independent study. And Renchi, you've got a really exciting experience that you've had where MBA program or a master's program is actually using the things we're talking about today to help prepare these up-and-coming leaders. So tell us about
Yeah,
that.
wouldn't it be great if our emerging leaders, particularly those who are in MBA programs, start to go through and understand what leadership's all about? So St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas, in their Master of Leadership and Change program, is using the Complete Leader as its textbook or introductory textbook in the first course of the program. So every student in the program goes through our TTI assessments, and they go through this journey to become a complete leader.
Yeah. And we also, one of the things I've been excited about is that we have a lot of faculty members that bring different facets of leadership to the conversation. And you've both been part of our faculty, and people can see your videos online if they go to thecompleteleader.org. And what we really want to do is continue this conversation. I guess I'd finish it by saying that one of the things Randy and I spent a lot of time talking about as we were finishing up the book is there ever a finish line? And we finally concluded that there is no finish line in becoming a complete leader. At best, one of your greatest joys is when you can turn and pass the baton to the next generation of leaders.
That's right.
So thanks for the conversation.
You're welcome.
Thank you.